Hello and welcome to Skeleton Songs.
She never lets me say that because I'm not as posh as her.
Would you like to have a go?
Hello, welcome to Skeleton Songs.
I don't think poshness actually helps in this scenario.
No, I don't think it does. But what it is, I've just been listening to this brilliant but miserable Muriel Spark novella on an audiobook, like a lot of Muriel Spark. And one of the characters is this miserable guy called Michael, who's very posh and very useless, and he's got this nervous tick of a giggle. He'll say things without smiling, on a sort of a questioning note, and he'll giggle, and he's a bit of a sorrowful character. So this mirthless giggle has stuck with me. He's the one.
What, are you implying that I'm both useless and have an annoying
No,
laugh?
it's why it sounds particularly posh. You are neither useless nor have an annoying laugh. You are indispensable, and you have a laugh like an avalanche of silver bells cascading into an imp's boudoir.
This is one of the benefits of dating a writer, ladies and gents.
It's one of the benefits of being a writer is you can get yourself out of conversational tight corners.
But also get oneself into them. So
Yes,
anyway, this is a special festive edition. We're doing it at breakfast rather than in the day.
Jingle bells.
Because this is the last day of work for us. Woohoo!
Well, TBC.
Yes.
I might, just dip the old typing fingers into work next. I wish you could see the look my wife's giving me right now.
So this is, again, firstly, as you probably know, game dev is often a bit of a lifestyle choice rather than just a job, because fortunately we're very lucky that we really enjoy what we do, and I know lots of people don't enjoy the jobs they do, so we're very grateful for that. But the slight downside is that it is quite difficult to down tools, because you kind of, firstly, especially as a small team, if we're not working, nothing gets done. And secondly, we like it, and it's very difficult with creative work to know, to say that's finished, that tick, that's done. And I had when I first started in games, over 10 years now? A long time. More like 12. I worked at this totally bonkers small studio that was a very good learning experience in many ways. And one of the things I learned from the boss was this great phrase that you are either in the business or on the business. And what he meant by that was when you are working on the detail of something, when you're actually involved in the creation of a part of a game, whether that's in any discipline of art, design, code, whatever, you are focused on a particular inside detailed part of the end product. And when you are on the business, you are looking at it more as either a product or as a marketing thing or as a creative vision. It doesn't have to just be a kind of horrible corporate word. It can be you're looking at it as a whole rather than the little parts that go into making it this wonderful whole. And his point was that it's almost impossible to be both in the business and on the business at the same time. So what my husband is currently experiencing is being in the business. So he is not able to sit back and think, yes, but what we do for our job is really to facilitate what we live in our lives, and Christmas is full of joy and family and fun, and sometimes it's nice to do those things.
But it is, but those things are compatible.
You're thinking, I've got lots of bugs in my hack and plan sheet, and I must get all of them complete, otherwise the task will continue in an indefinite state.
Well, so first of all,
what part of what I said was wrong?
None. But first of all, 2 or 3 hours of light bug squashing.
Yeah.
Every week.
They're not going to squash themselves.
Precisely. Is unless they're gravity beetles, is entirely compatible.
Oh no, I feel sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
Poor gravity beetles.
The world's most tragic, the universe's most tragic insect.
This is the bad part of dating a writer.
Yeah. They can only grow so big.
No, please don't. I'm actually feeling really sad for these made-up creatures.
But fortunately, we discovered a procedure that allows them to survive. And the 2 or 3 hours of bug squashing entirely compatible with joy, family, Yule logs,
all that other nonsense,
mulled wine, tinsel.
Oh, I'm not sure bug squashing is compatible with mulled wine, depending on how interesting you want the solutions to be.
So in seriousness, what you also say, usually correctly, is that the first evening after you finish work, I'll spend the whole evening sort of looking distracted and saying, perhaps if we added smoothing to the pathfinding, but actually that might be at odds with the whole geometric look. And then, the day after I'll say maybe I'll do some work on Monday, and then by Monday I'll be like, with my feet up, covered in turkey, with a paper hat on, go, I'm never going back to work. We can retire. Fuck it. Let them finish the game themselves. But so that some of these things may, in some respects, be true. But the other point is, and I guess we could segue into talking meaningfully about something. We put out the pre-alpha.
Yeah.
What
we did, that was our big thing this fortnight.
Was that a week last Wednesday? I think it was,
just over a week ago in Human
So it's
Speak.
now we've got two chunks of testers in. We've 45 people, I think, all told, testing it. They come back with loads of bugs.
Yes, thank you. If anyone is listening, he's helped us. You've been really useful.
And as ever, a bunch of the feedback. Yes, thank you. A bunch of the feedback is, as I think I was saying last time, it's not what you expect it will be about. It's about some completely different problem or something completely different people like. But now, this has triggered the predisposition, the long-standing predisposition in me, where after a launch, basically I work 10 hours a day until there are fewer bugs coming in than I'm fixing every day. And the fact that I have half a dozen bugs sitting in my inbox right now, half a dozen unprocessed feedback emails, causes me existential disquiet. And especially is what we were talking about last night, the fact there's a couple of bits people have found where you've got an infinite loop that can lay to farm resources. And obviously that's fine, because this is not going to survive into the final game, or probably a different one where we can infinitely harvest resources. But we're going to invalidate the sage. It's not like people are going to be keeping the rose influencers that they've picked up in the first week of alpha and selling them on eBay. But after years, back in the Forward London days, if there was a loop that allowed people to get resources for free actions, that had to be fixed.
Just to be clear, for anyone who doesn't know, Fallen London is a live service game that AK initially started in the games industry by creating. So you have Fallen London live service PTSD, basically.
Yes, exactly. And even with Culture Simulator or something, if it's a live game on Steam, fine, people.
The first question I always ask when AK sort of shuffles uncomfortably in his seat across the room and says something like, someone's just reported a nasty bug, the first question I ask is it in the live game? Because if it's in the beta, there's always a beta version of the game live at the same time as live, and basically sort of keen beans are on the beta because they get things sooner, and often they like being helpful in sending in bug reports, but the vast majority of the player base stays on the normal live branch because they're not interested in game dev or they've just got other things to do. So basically, if there's a nasty bug on the beta, we've got to fix it, but it's okay. If there's a nasty bug on live, firstly, that's our direct block on our revenue stream, which is how we survive. And secondly, just cancel all plans because that's what's happening. Dinner's off. Whatever we're doing this weekend is off until it's fixed.
One of the particular arpeggios of indie life is that I'll mean to push a build live at midday, run into some annoying build bug where the extra field in the GOG interface is getting double serialized so Unity won't build or something. Fix it, push the build live a few hours later than I planned because it turned out actually the cat was sick on something important and we had to spend some time cleaning that. So it eventually goes live at 4:00 in the afternoon, which is not as late as we normally do.
Yeah.
And I'll do testing, but I'll miss something. And then I'll be sitting down to dinner at 6:30, and I'll look at my phone and say, "Oh Christ, sorry, can you put it back in the oven? I need to go up and fix this right away."
This is one of the many reasons that when we do a proper launch, when we launch a game, for the first time on our full release, we always launch it on a Thursday. Or I guess we could agree to a Wednesday if we really wanted to push the boat out. But basically, you never want to launch a game or anything, DLC, update, whatever, on a Friday night or at sort of 6 p.m. just as you're clocking off. Because firstly, America is one of the biggest chunks of the gaming audience and they're just waking up. We're in the UK, so you guys are ahead of us. And secondly, if there is a problem, you either have the choice of stopping whatever you're doing in your life, like sleeping, and fixing it, or taking a 12-hour hit where people will not only not be able to buy your game, potentially, but potentially leaving an increasing heap of negative feedback, which obviously will then discourage other people from picking up the game in the future. So it can have quite a sort of disastrous cascade effect, which is why you hustle, particularly because obviously you're the code guy. And I'm very grateful for that, to be clear. I know I'm being slightly mocking of you, but I am very, very grateful at how hard you work. And I think people notice it, right? Because if anybody has been through a Weather Factory launch with us on the other side, you'll notice that we put something out being really nervous and we try our best to make a big song and dance. And so far, we're very grateful to everybody who's bought games and been there on day one. It's really helpful. And then you'll probably notice that over the next at least 7 days there will be at least a patch a day, probably with increasing numbers of typos in the patch notes as you get more and more deranged. But there's this flurry of very impressive activity as you're just churning out these fixes, boom, 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 and then, as you say, when we reach this sort of equilibrium of basically we've still got loads of issues to address because it's the first time the game has reached literally the entire world that wants to play it, but we're no longer feeling like we're drowning under this increasing load of negative problems.
And emotionally, it moves from these days both Cultist Simulator and Book of Hours are extremely stable, and also people are aware that they are 2-year-old or in the other case 7-year-old games, so they're probably not going to be as updated as aggressively. People sort of expect older games to be a bit wonkier, but I will fix a couple of bugs a month on Book of Hours, and I'll hand over 2 or 3 times that many to Roman, our long-term contractor, who acts as custodian of the code base. But I'd still worry about going on holiday for a month. But immediately after launch, it really feels like you're being sprayed with angry glitter, and
a very good way of
you
putting
just
it.
never expect it to end. It's very hard to believe that it will.
Well, I was
and then one day you get up and there's no incoming bug reports. And you're like, oh. And then you realise the email's broken. But
yeah, you realise the site's down.
Yeah.
You've got to fix that instead. I always feel really guilty as well because certainly as a 2-person team, I feel like game dev is this kind of sine wave. And certainly when I enjoy it the most is when those sine waves are in sync with each other. So, if you've got loads of work on and I've got loads of work on at the same time, we literally work at 2 different PCs in the same room, across the room from each other. So it feels really collaborative, and I'll be fixing something and saying, I've just pushed that into Unity, and you'll be like, great, I've just pushed some changes, can you check that? And it feels really constructive and fun and zingy, and that phase normally happens most just before a big release. So for example, we felt that just before we released the alpha this sprint, because we were really hustling to get a bunch of final things fixed in place before we felt confident in pushing out this build to actual people. But when I think probably most out of sync is at an actual launch, because I do all the marketing, and marketing's work is super stacked before a launch, and you've got to get everything up in place. And I know it sounds kind of empty, but there's actually a lot of little bit and pieces that goes into doing this big kind of collaborative
it really I
thing.
cannot emphasize enough how grateful I am to have you being both meticulous and creative, taking care of all the flipping details and making a lot of the little details entertaining or thoughtful, or caring about the fact that something goes out on Facebook has to be a different visual creative for something that do we even bother with Twitter or Blue Sky, do we? Really?
We do.
Sorry, we do. Lottie bothers about it because I wasn't aware of it. But that has to be. And, back in the days when I was doing my own marketing or doing, the very early days of Fell Better, as Fell Better's marketing, it would really just be sort of, here's a picture, post it, put a caption, a link if you're lucky. What else do you fuckers want? It's a game. Play it.
Yeah, but then every so often you do a bit of marketing and it gets twice as much as I do, and I throw my big paddy for the year. And
well, that's because
out.
you do.
But my point was,
approximately 1,000 times as much.
I'm
Most
British and I can't take these compliments. I don't know what to do with myself, but thank you. But my point was that marketing is very heavily stacked ahead of launch, and a lot of code work. Not that you're kicking back before a launch, but a lot of the kind of real stress of launch is the immediate aftermath of it going live, because you're the one checking to see, are there any major technical issues that we're not aware of, and I can't help you with those. So it's this odd shift where we move from the sine waves are just totally out of sync. So yeah, I always do feel a bit guilty when you're totally burning the midnight oil, and the best thing I can do is shut the cats up.
It's another long stand. I've been working one.
It's one of the great bits about art is that if you put in a sofa in an isometric room and there's not a problem, at launch there's probably not going to be a problem. Whereas with code, it seems to just be full of
this is
traps.
Why I keep saying, I sometimes wish I wrote novels instead of made games, because you don't get bugs in novels. Sure, somebody can say, hang on, I checked out the timeline, and how could Missy have been born on the same day as Barbara if it was a leap year? And you're like, fuck it.
Shut up.
But and people do put about corrections in books, but you get proofreaders catch this stuff, and fundamentally, you if you read 5 paragraphs in different order, it doesn't cause a race condition that makes the book catch fire.
Yeah.
But should we tell them about the door bug?
I think you should tell them about the door bug. I think it's your baby. Meow.
We put out I think 5 updates. We do get it done, don't we? Since Wednesday last, but on Friday now, so that's 9 days. And some of them have been bug fixes. Some of them have been additional content. One of the things that I didn't get to do before we launched the alpha was add some content for the cat in the front room, which is in some respects quite indulgent because he's based on our cat, as some people are aware. In other respects, it's much less so because, first of all, I wanted to test some conversational features. You can chase him up into the bookcase, for example. He's not animated, but he moves. Secondly, he's animated. He has a squeeze box animation, but secondly, he's called Kione, which obviously is relevant to if you know the Cultist Simulator setting, one of the important entities in the setting, and he serves as an introduction to a later city. But I animated this cat. I added sound effects when you begin talking to him and stop talking to him. So I added a wonderful meow sound that I used in Book of Hours as well. And because of the way I've set up the library of sound effects and the way that rather than asking the library for a particular sound effect, please play the meow, it says please play the begin animation or the open animation for fridge or large wooden thing or cat, and then it falls back to other things that are available. And I put because of the eccentricities of the convention, it was open cat and closed cat that I used as the beginning and ending thing, but I didn't realise I hadn't put I put open cat and closed cat basically as the default option. So anything in the building that you opened or closed, if it didn't have a sound effect specifically defined, it would default to meow. So every time you opened the front door of the sanitarium, it went meow. Every time you opened the fridge, I think it would sound like a fridge because there was an explicit fridge open, but every time you opened the cigar humidor, it would go meow.
Which isn't quite the vibe we're going for with our sort of post-war, everything's broken, but there's hope in the first green shoots of winter.
No, and then because one of the other things we do is this is mostly not in the game yet, but it'll be in the last update before the holidays, I think, is...
What, today?
Yes. yeah. Well, I just got to do some testing here. But we'll say,
so
anyway.
When I said earlier that never release anything on Friday, what I've immediately done is told a porky.
You're right, I won't have to go back to work on Monday. The
hoist on my own petard.
Which means fart.
No, okay, continue.
Pétillon.
Look,
Fart
I'll fight you for Shakespeare.
I bet he thought jokes about farting were funny.
Yeah, he so did. Well, just pretend he didn't.
Meow.
Pretend he had gorgeous hair and wore a scarf.
When we put out the pre-alpha, all the NPCs in the sanitarium were still static sprites, just images, with a...
Just images.
Just beautiful images, but the point is they didn't move or breathe or have their being.
No, they did look like they'd been sort of shocked into silence.
And it was a placeholder selection effect. When you moused over them, they turned sort of vaguely greenish.
Which I think you did to spite me, to make sure that I fixed it. And your little smile is telling me that that's
No,
true.
I would have if I thought of it. But I, honestly, it was such
it made
an
them
early
a sort
version
of
the game.
nauseous green.
I still remember, and I went back at the point we still had some 3D objects in the game, and I was just tinting the mesh. I just sort of picked a thing on the colour picker that was distinctive but not obtrusive, and it happened to be that. Anyway, so I got stuck with it for the next year because you didn't get around to changing it, because doing outlining on animated objects is surprisingly difficult, and sprites even is a bit difficult. You can get off-the-shelf shaders that do it. The way a shader works is basically you put something very very very
9:45.
Very broadly is you have an image, you feed every pixel through in that image through some sort of script, and the script might say turn it green, or it might say if it's next to another green pixel, turn it blue. If it's next to 3 other green pixels, turn it yellow. And as a result, you can get sort of ultimately chromatic aberration, or it says, it's next to a transparent pixel, that means it must be the edge. Turn it yellow, so we've got outline. But obviously the cases are more complicated than that. If you've got somebody's hand with their finger and thumb close together, for example, it might not recognise an edge, or so you get this algorithmic thing in. And what we kept seeing was various dev blogs from people saying, you wouldn't believe that outlining is actually just a bit more complicated than you'd expect. And we'd say, well, no, we're just using the all-in-one shaders pack off the asset store. That's great, it's got an outline thing. And a lot of people say, well, it is, but you remember we had to keep tweaking it a book of hours because you've got these nasty patches around the edge. And
it's
then,
literally part of the reason that we have the art style we have, because I learned if you want outlines, and obviously with not point and click, with a PC game when you're controlling it usually with a mouse, if you want to hover over something, one of the best ways of showing that you have hovered over something that you're about to select is some sort of outline. Everyone understands that. It's very lightweight in terms of programmatic requirements. It's all great. But if you have any sort of fade effect on the sprite in question, the shader doesn't know what is going on, and it can highlight part of the screen up in the top right hand corner, and the whole thing looks like you've sort of dropped a bowl of porridge on a rainbow. And that is not the effect that we wanted. So one of the reasons we went for the art style we did in travelling is because I wanted there to be this same, I find very aesthetically pleasing sort of grainy coloration effect on the sprites themselves, because I like that sort of texture, but they've all got really clean outlines around the actual sprite. There's no fading, there's no fuzz. Even Chi, who's made of he's our cat, who's made of fluff, he's like actually defined bits of fur. I haven't just used a brush that made it look furry, so that we can have a shader outline on the sprites that will not be exploded. So it's funny how deep this thing goes into production design.
It's all the stuff you don't think you'll need to think about or anything. We'll just move the men's around the screens. The thing on the asset store that does 95% of what we want. Well, 90%. Well, 75%. Well, it doesn't work at all once you start. Anyway, we found a solution. We put animated, just idle animated for now, because most of them didn't need to move. When you recruit your first companion at the very end of the demo, he will follow you around without animations.
Will he?
And get stuck in things, yeah.
Oh, Vince.
I thought I got a bug report from somebody saying, lol, he is my muse. A picture of him stuck in the stairs. But we went through, we put in the animations. The very first entity to be animated in the sanitarium was the cat. So
it's Spencer. But
you're
did
right,
the cat.
very first non-player entity.
Yeah.
And so I did a copy paste of the original thing when I was putting together the way actual NPCs would work. And I forgot to change the relevant field. So when I tested you talking to Dr. Aubier, Cheese Portrait appeared instead. So you're having this very learned conversation with a passive-aggressive sanitarium director who looks remarkably like a kitten, like that Zoom-era judge during the pandemic.
I promise I'm not a cat.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's been a whole slice. What else? You've been in pathfinding? That's another one. We talked last episode about how difficult it is to tell Unity whether something is in front of or behind of another thing when you're working in 2D, and how that's, as far as we can tell, basically why people do 3D, so that solution is resolved for them. But pathfinding is a similar issue, as you might expect.
Yeah, it's just there were several. This is a thing. This is why games have unstuck buttons. Is you might go all the way from our simple little grid graph sprite based game to like Arc Raiders with the nav mesh. People still get stuck in geometry, but it's got lots of slightly unusual cases. So we had cases where people would the character would be able to nudge across a collider if you sort of inched forward. So that fix for that, which is also a useful fix in itself, is to say there's a minimum distance you can walk. So if you click right next to Spencer's foot, then he won't try to walk to that point. And that also stops the sort of slightly juddery effect you get if you keep clicking. I changed the update to fixed update if you're a Unity dev, and if not, it's not worth explaining. For a relevant bit of code, so things get less out of sync, but then that caused a related problem with the animations, which tended to flicker, so I needed some different code. The animations didn't change too much to fix that, and we changed some of the settings on the grid graph that you navigate around, and we fiddled the size of Spencer's colliders, and I slightly changed the way that it actually moves. So lots and lots of little fiddly changes, as a result of which now I'll need to go through the sanitarium and make sure you can still reach all the usable objects, and you can't get stuck anywhere else. But we were saying that...
Yes, I wasn't sure if you could reach the radio. That looked a bit funny to me, but I'll check that.
You can't actually interact with the radio directly anyway.
Oh.
Because, and this is interesting... So
but we are going to have that in, because we wanted to have...
you're right.
This is not a promise, because AK will kick me in the shins. This is not a promise, but we are intending currently to have a bit of diegetic, period-appropriate Django Reinhardt that you can choose... To play between, so you can select which music you want to listen to in the sanitarium, because one of the orderlies who works at the sanitarium is a big
Reinhardt fan. Yeah, one of the way these things develop as you go, we could have a radio you could listen to and change music on, and then when you talk to the orderly who's standing next to him, a conversation you have to have, so you need to get past him. You can examine the radio, listen to the radio, work out what the music is, and maybe get some benefit from that. And having done that, it felt odd to go and examine the radio afterwards, because I didn't want to make it necessarily the case that it's the same music as playing, like, you know, Django Reinhardt 24/7, the same song. So I thought we'll just pass on by that, but we'll switch the state anyway. Pathfinding, tidying up, things being more complicated than we expect. Usable objects being stuck.
You're saying you have to go back through the sanitarium, and they've made all these little changes to make sure that you can reach everything. But basically, the TLDR is it's like a bunch of different tiny little tweaks to make it feel smooth and simple for the player when they're travelling around, because everyone knows, you know, how people walk and what they could expect reasonably to walk between and behind and through. So again, it's one of those kind of things that I discovered this learning animation, which I've been doing this year, that... you know, many people listening to this might not be artists, but everybody has a really deep-seated and intrinsic understanding of what it looks like to walk or run when they see another human being. You might not be able to envisage it in your own mind. You might not be able to draw it on a piece of paper right now. But if you saw somebody walking in a funny way, you would think that's not how people normally walk. And if you're trying to do a run or walk cycle, it's actually quite mathematical and anatomical, because if you get it wrong, it just looks wrong, and people don't need to be high-level animators to see that. Everybody will look at that and think there's something wrong with that animation if I can't tell you what it is. And similarly with pathfinding, you know, there is just a basic understanding of where you can expect to go. And if you know, Spencer does some weird juddery thing, or if Spencer ends up stuck in a wall, or if Spencer takes an odd path that, you know, he clearly could have just turned right into the room, and instead he does a little curly cue, everyone's just like, there's something wrong there.
Instant uncanny valley. Yeah.
That's the thing, yeah. So it's one of those things that looks very simple, but if you get it wrong, everybody can immediately tell. There's no hiding.
And one of the things, I mean, I was intellectually aware of this anyway, but I'm viscerally aware of it. If you've played Golden Age, painted background, isometric games, like, you know, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, or Icewind Dale or something, you'll often get a situation where you've got a lovely big environment where you just can't go to some parts of it that look like, you know, it's just the side of the room with a wall and nothing there, but they haven't let you go up there. Now, admittedly, there's nothing up there to interact with, so it's not a big deal, but it feels slightly disorienting. Well,
this is one I think.
And then as soon as we start doing grown-ups, you're like, right, because if you went up into that wall area, then they'd have to do some slightly fiddly stuff about whether you appeared in front of or behind that bookcase. So clearly they just said,
no.
Velvet rope. Don't go there. You don't need to. Why can't I go? We do not go. We do not go to the corner of the room with the bookcase by the velvet rope. It's not. But no, we would not.
There's literally a plant in the sanitarium that is now a velvet rope. It's just like, we don't go near the plant. We just walk past it. We don't make eye contact.
There's a glitch in the sprite ordering when Spencer starts talking to people, where the game checks what his up or down position is compared to sprites, and it's got some offsets and special behaviour to deal with some of the awkward cases. And basically, if he's lower down the screen, he's in front of things, and if he's higher up the screen, he's behind things. There's a couple of cases where he'll start talking to somebody next to a wall, and the time freezes when he starts talking to them. And I need to run one more update when he does that, because at the moment he'll get slightly out of sync with his position, so he'll disappear behind the wall only while he's talking to them. So it looks like he's talking to them while he's standing behind a curtain.
He's in some sort of purdah.
Yeah. But what I was going to say before, I remember now, is we were joking that starting the game as sanitarian with the first level is like boot camp, where we really go through basic training this, because it's such a cramped environment where Spencer's constant. No, but it's genuine. It's being the tribe is genuinely great. Because as soon as you're outside, on Teeb or Mahogany or Camp, then he's slaloming around like Brits on American roads. You're like, Christ, this road is the size of a stadium. I can go left and there's no car, so I can go right. And when I reach a car, I can sort of bounce off it as if it's a trampoline, because all your cars are made of tungsten and designed to be hit by rockets and shrug them off. And all the cars in this country are basically made out of plasticine and driven by kittens.
Our artist, our freelancer Adrian, is currently drawing an extremely beautiful section of Berlin, which is a place you can get to at the very end of the game, and it's wintry.
Halfway through the game.
Is that halfway through? I thought it was one of the...
No, it's kind of a...
Okay, no spoilers.
Yeah.
Okay,
inflection point.
Okay, you get it in later in the game.
You do.
And it is this very beautiful series of, it's quite desolate because Berlin did not do well out of the Second World War, as many people know. So there's lots of sort of snow-covered, like rutted fields full of sort of slightly decaying vegetables, and then a sort of slight rubble pit, but a big road that has been flattened by all the tanks and everything that have been rolling around there. And I keep looking at it and being like, it's so flat. It's so flat. The only thing you have to watch out for is like there's a scarecrow, put a box around that, no problem.
And there's the
gonna be great.
There's elements where basically the world has worn thin without any more spoilers, which are even flatter. So I did a lot of reading about post Battle of Berlin before we got into this, and there's lots and lots of fascinating, often miserable details. One of the things that really stayed with me, Berlin Zoo, which features in what's left of it in Travelling at Night, most of the animals died, but there was this passionately attached zoo director who took over from the sort of Nazi yes man who'd been given the job originally, because he obviously didn't want to stick around and make sure the hippo was fed. And she was determined to keep this hippo alive. So lots of animals died. She begged for food from the Allies when they came in. They survived barely on donations. The hippo lived to the age of I think he lived into the 70s, at which point he died after being mortally wounded with a battle within a battle with his son, because hippos are bastards. But so the zoo is this weird expression of shattered optimism. And then at the corner of the zoo, we took this from photographs, there's a flak fortress which Adrian has now drawn as much as he can fit in, and the German flak fortresses in World War II were quite something. So the Nazis, I'm against them, but one of the things, most Nazis were German.
Yep.
And the Germans in mid-20th century had a deserved reputation for extremely efficient engineering practices, and they built these colossal sort of quasi-star-shaped concrete flak fortresses which were designed to survive anything up to a direct hit. And there was one in the corner of the zoo because it was a suitable place to put it. And after the Battle of Berlin, the Allies thought they'd bring this thing down.
Let's get rid of all this Nazi stuff.
To get rid of all this Nazi stuff, and also, if we went to war with Germany again, we want to make sure it's properly demilitarised.
Yeah.
Also, it's a bit of an eyesore, and it's next to the hippo enclosure. So they kept trying to blow it up, and they couldn't. They couldn't. Made to withstand anything short of direct hit. Made to withstand the US Corps of Engineers crawling over it and planting gelignite on it and standing back, and then the explosives go off, and there's a cloud of dust, and it's still standing. And
I just literally
look at each other and literally go, German engineering.
Yeah, I love the idea of these like nerds being like stroke shit, like wasn't enough. What can we? And
in the end, they drilled enough holes in it, packed them with enough gelignite, they managed to destroy it. Hamburg, meanwhile, is worth googling, ladies and gents and others, if you if you have a moment, Hamburg Flak Fortress, rather than tearing it down, they turned it into a wonderful green space and filled it with flats.
It's actually quite magical, and it's one of the most emotive images is the image of the green sheep pushing up through concrete, or the first sign of nature reclaiming something awful like a war zone. And this is a great example of that. It's not so much actually the fact that it's nature, although that's gorgeous. It's just the fact that there's this real sort of, literally green, growing, beautiful, curated, people first, happy looking thing that now exists in the bones of something that was built purely for war, and then couldn't be destroyed properly. So it's a really sort of positive thing that doesn't forget the past, but it feels very hopeful about the future, which we like. I was going to say about when we were talking earlier about bits with the velvet rope on an isometric area that you can't get to, which I'm sure people will recognise from other isometric CRPGs. I wonder if this was a quiet innovation in Planescape Torment, because one of my favourite bits of that game, and I have many, is that it's the earliest game I've played where you could click on different interesting bits of the environment and get a little bit of, I don't know what you'd call it, diegetic text, a text that's actually overlaid on the game that doesn't pop up in some sort of UI window, and it's usually just one or two sentences. It's a short little snippet that's something interesting, and it might say, this is a brass statue of a lady holding a dove, or this.
But you don't go into the full conversation UI.
No, exactly. You just get a little, you click it, you get a little text thing that appears, and then it disappears, and then you never get to click it again, so it's like a one shot. And I wonder if this was them trying to make a virtue out of having lots of beautifully painted areas that you can't actually reach because it's too complicated to work out who's in front of what and where you can stand. And instead of just saying, look, actually 80% of what you see you can't interact with, and you've got this 20% of kind of interactive avenue between it all, and it looks good, so get on with it, rather than accepting that, maybe they said, in the 80% that you actually can't reach, we're going to give you these little, and because it was written by Avalone and is therefore very well written, every time I got a snippet, that's why I loved it, because it was always just like, it was some bizarre and interesting and rich, and I wonder if that's where it came from.
I think as a point of nerdy precision, I'm pretty sure
he's looking at me like this is definitely not where it came from.
No. I'm pretty sure they did that in Fallout. I'm sure they did it in Fallout 2. I'm pretty sure
they may well have. I just haven't played anything earlier,
which doesn't undermine your point. I don't know. I suspect to some extent it was, let's add some interactivity to things that you can't really interact with. To some extent, it's just, as we found in the Sanitarium, where obviously we do something similar in the game generally, and it's it's a common idiom now.
But it just made me think.
It does. I think it's just cheaper than doing a whole conversation.
Yeah.
And often conversations outstay their welcome. Originally, I wanted to have a conversational interaction with every single painting in the Sanitarium. And
then you saw how many paintings I put in.
Well, actually, I go off on these quixotic quests where I say, no, we are literally going to have a taste interaction for every single item of food in the last.
How many endings did our last game have?
Yeah, I know. And look, there were mathematical reasons for that.
It had over 100 endings.
Only just over 100.
Mm-hmm.
And there were very short endings. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the point is, I realised that in some cases it started feeling like taking an exam, or at least a sort of aptitude questionnaire, where the game insisted on asking you how you felt about every single painting in there. And sometimes you just would look at it and say, "Oh, I think that boat's upside down."
Well, that's what I mean. I think the short one-shot environmental text thing feels more like you're looking at something and you're getting this, but with a dialogue window, feels like you're actually really engaging with it.
But one of the relative innovations, and it's by no means a total innovation because I've seen this elsewhere as well, is that I wanted the vast majority of one-click dialogue interactions that just shows a line to give you something else as well, usually just an influence, which is useful in crafting, or an experience point, or something, because I wanted them to occupy a space somewhere between click this and get something saying the statue's nose is missing, perhaps someone bit it off, and opening a chest and finding some vendor trash in there, because CRPGs scatter vendor trash chests around the world, so you've got something to do.
What's vendor trash? Stuff that you can sell to vendors for one coin.
Well, I can tell you never took a paddy to I literally can't remember the name
What's happening?
of the raid dungeon Warcraft I was going to
happening?
cite, thereby exposing my own inadequacy. Vendor trash is stuff that you find in the world that exists solely to be sold to somebody.
That's literally what I just said.
Yes.
Right.
But I was busy laughing at you
I
in my nerd
small.
voice. So that's the basic interaction. That you find stuff in the world, and it's not just all gold. They'll say this one's an aquamarine, and this one's a statue of a dog, and this one's some silk. And then sometimes you need that stuff for crafting. That often doesn't work because then you'll accidentally sell it before you realise you need it. And then after the first time you've done that, your inventory fills up like your Madastart's aunt's attic with everything you've ever found in case at some point you might need it, and be struck with seller's remorse. But it gives you a little bit of variety, but it also feels slightly rote. So I just wanted to make sure there was some tiny narrative hit every time you find stuff, and every time you get a little dopamine hit of things. And as ever, it's incremental. It's not revolutionary, because the experience of clicking on a Citroen and getting a Forge influence is not fundamentally different from clicking on a chest and getting some pig iron. But if it gives you a line of reasonably well-written dialogue that also allows you to guess whose car that is later, then that's the thing.
Fun. And it also goes some way to getting rid of something that I've talked about really disliking personally in particularly AAA games, because those games are often so beautiful and therefore so complicated. I've played a number of AAA RPGs and ARPGs and etc. That are absolutely gorgeously realised in 3D, and then I've realised pretty quickly that they all seem to have what I call a layer of plastic over the environment. So you'll be walking through this gorgeous animated medieval faux cyberpunk city, whatever it is, and you'll think, wow, this is the best place I've ever been in my life, and then you'll try and interact with something and your character will sort of skid off like you're trying to make two ice cubes kiss, and it's not happening, and then you're like, okay, maybe that's just a difficult area, and you'll try and click on a barrel or something, and it's clearly it's a collection of the barrels and all the gubbins that have been placed by that, and it's clearly one single beautifully realised 3D asset, and you're like, okay, so that's actually not really what I'm seeing. And ultimately what is apparent is that the world is so beautiful and complicated that they can't possibly have you be able to interact with and open up every little container that some 3D artist has laboured over to make it beautiful. So what they've done is they've either said you can't interact with any of this, it's just there to look pretty on your way towards your main quest, or they've said you can interact with it but only as one single conglomerate asset, which again just breaks the immersion for me, because I just feel that suddenly everything is a sort of Lego piece rather than I'm actually in this living, breathing, beautiful world as presented. So, fortunately for us, we haven't got either the talent or the money to make a game like that. So that's off the table. But what we do want to do is make sure that the people who are running around our world in travelling don't feel that it has a layer of plastic on it. Of course there are things that you can't interact with. There's a hell of a lot of things you can't interact with, and actually every scene is a carefully planned out section of walkable ground with all the painting that we haven't done around the edges hidden away, because that's not relevant. You don't need to see all of the world. You want to see the world that we are presenting to you that's interesting. But we want to make sure that when you're in there, it feels like there's constantly little exciting boxes to open. And I don't just mean literal boxes, I mean figurative, lots of things to click on, lots of lore to get, lots of people that you want to talk to, rather than people who you just feel you have to talk to, or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm pleased we're doing it that way, and we will not have a layer of plastic.
I've just realised the two actual boxes exist in the game so far. One is a humidor, which is to say
I had to Google that.
Place where you keep cigars.
We've got a very nice one. It's got a walnut roll top that's carefully painted by yours truly, and then a little red tassel that you pull and it goes.
We've got an open version, and you click on it.
We've got an open version so you can see the cigars inside.
Oh, this is basically the point of this game: is that nobody cares about this sort of thing
at all.
apart from the kind of people who will buy this game. Who really care about it. I remember when I.
Can I tell you my
released a snapshot?
Fact?
Please do. But I was going to say, I remember when I released rather self-consciously a snapshot of a later conversation in the game, where you're talking to your old comrade about why your character abandoned the church, which you get some role-playing options on, and one of the possibilities, one of the choices you make is get into the theology of it, don't get into the theology of it. and because I thought a bunch of people won't want to get into all my sort of Neoplatonic research cast-offs. They'll just want to say war never changes. But when I posted, a whole bunch of people said every game should have a get into the theology of it option. So that's our target audience, people who want to get into the theology of it. Go on then.
I was just saying that my version of that, I think that's your whole thing, right? So I can't and don't particularly want to compete with that. But you have inspired me in many ways, and my version of that is in the sanitarium in the living room. There is a piano in the left-hand corner, which is carefully, researched to make sure that it's period appropriate and that it was made and was a sort of likely piano to appear in a French sitting room of high society in 1948. But there is a piece of sheet music on the front of the piano, which I have carefully cut out for you to make clickable if you'd like or not. And the sheet music is actual period appropriate music that's rendered at like 50 pixels max, so like no one can see it, but I can promise you that it is music that would appear on a piano in 1948 in Antibes in France if you were actually there. So that's how you have affected me.
One of the well, I think it's always been you, but you don't like doing things wrong. You like doing things right.
That's correct.
And one of the traditional, not name any names here. One of the traditional interactions between writers and artists, or creative directors and artists, is that the writer or the creative director will say, this needs to look like a 5th century temple. So that's post-Roman, right? It's British, but probably it was built on an original the site of like a Roman shrine. But obviously it's later work, and you'll come back and it will be the Parthenon, and you're like, that's the Parthenon, mate. And they'd be like, well, it's got pillars. What do you want?
Yeah.
And the worst thing then, as the writer or creative director, is not to be being righteously enraged that they haven't listened to your detailed instructions that are super important to the soul of the game, is relatively easy. When you can't decide whether these are actually essential instructions to the soul of the game, or whether it was just what you happen to think of on that particular day, and now you're cross because your whim has not been honoured, is a challenge. But often, it is important, and I remember cases in previous games where people made completely wrong assumptions, where players completely misunderstood what the timeline was supposed to be, because basically the temple looked Greek or whatever. And with you, I know you've always done the research, and every time I say, "Is that period appropriate?" You're like, yes. And the same thing actually with Adrian, our
Adrian's
freelancer.
really good at it too.
I think we noticed actually he had put one car in the game that was for 1953, not 1948. But it is such a small difference. I just fuck it, it's alternate history, and it works. And it's fine. It looks better than the other one.
We lost 50% of our players with a single sentence.
I'm sorry, not fuck it, it's alternate history, but obviously there's a detailed timeline that branches from after the Darlon deal and the division of
There we
France
go.
to ensure that
Clawing
the
it back.
Citroën factory rose up.
I don't know, it could be an early prototype.
It could be
Nobody
exactly.
knows. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a
You heard a real life notification.
game dev getting in the way there. Yeah, and so on the one hand, I'm very sympathetic to that, right? Firstly, I love artists. My experience of artists, both as one and having worked with them, is that they are basically the brass section of an orchestra, which is they're the cool ones, they're chill, they're basically happy to be there. They're usually the devs who are like, I actually really enjoy my job, but not a lot of other devs are like, dev is awful and I wish I didn't get into it. Like, artists are fun. But the one time, again, without getting into any details, the one time that I was on the other side of that and I was a writer and had written something that an artist was illustrating, and I gave them a brief, and what came back was just they clearly either hadn't read the brief at all or they didn't care, to the point where firstly there weren't any women in the scene at all, and I was like, well, firstly the writer is a woman, and secondly wasn't a specifically male specific event. That's a bit odd that there aren't. So I had to go back and basically very politely say, could we put some women in, please? And it was so I am sympathetic to how that feels, because it is just, sometimes it is frustrating, but bless you for thinking sometimes it is just the kind of getting up on your...
Well, that's the story I do tell. I don't mind naming names here because I'm the only person who comes out of this at all badly, is back when you're making Sunless Sea. It has the four cardinal directions in, and north, south and east all are important. If you go west, you run into London and you can't go any further. And if you go north... Liam Welton, the programmer on Sunless Sea, put snow in, and he's like, look at the snow particle effect I put when you go north, isn't it pretty? And it's like, London is located in the Neath, which is an immense cavern, and we don't have snow when you go north. Snow only occurs at Christmas because it's the remains of people spewed from the spires of the bazaar. Have you not read the 3,000 word document that I already provided? No, you were busy making the game work. Whoa. And I went away, unclenched my parts and said, and thought, you know what? People expect snow in the north.
I was going to say, everybody who saw that would have been like, oh, it's really pretty.
Yeah, exactly. When you go north,
now I feel chilly.
And ultimately, all the law I pulled out of my bum. And
stop ruining our games.
Pétillon.
Oh God.
And then lovingly sculpted and cooked and enhanced all the rest of it. But I thought, well, how about if I change the setting so we can have the snow, which after all looks pretty? And I said, well, there's a gate in the north of the Neath which leads into centre space, so the air's freezing, so there's snow. Bish bosh, done. Because sometimes the artist's vision is an essential, coherent unity which allows players to experience the vibe, and sometimes it's just the artist saw a goat on the way into work. Sorry, when I say the artist, I mean the writer, and thinks goats are great. Let's put more goats in the game. My other favourite story along those lines, just the whole reason the Overgoat exists in Fort London, is that I started typing into a database. In database in 2009, I typed in the words battered grey overcoat, and I originally misspelled it as Overgoat, and I thought,
I don't use that.
Yeah,
gift from the gods. What else have you been working on?
What else have we been working on?
I've been doing trailers.
I've stopped all the doors meowing immediately.
And when this comes out, the trailer will be out too.
The
trailer.
So we've got a really short trailer, haven't we?
Yeah, well, so the way that I really enjoy making trailers. I'm a very visual person, and I really get a lot out of very rhythm-based trailers. So I have absolutely no training at all, and you can probably tell when you've seen a bunch of our trailers. So what we tend to do is I do the early trailers over the course of development that aim to showcase the game as it is, which again, we can promise you that there's no CGI or clever fudging when you see a game trailer, because I've made it and I don't know how to do that. So what you see is what is from the game, right? So this is honest...
is a mixture of gameplay and pre-rendered footage. No,
it's not. It's just 100% just what I recorded off Unity. So I enjoy that. I think it's a good skill for me to pick up on. And the way that I certainly do it is I'll come up with the music first, because I think the music is really important for setting the mood, and a lot of our games are about the mood. And I think it also is a really immediate way of communicating that mood to somebody who's never heard of us or our games before. If you play a happy song, people think it's going to be a happy game. If you play a sad song, it's going to be a sad game. We're starting from that kind of basic assumption. And of course, on top of that music, on top of that basic emotion, you've got all these other things. So for example, I was looking at Jazz Manouche as a soundtrack for our first trailer, welcoming people to this 1940s world of post-war kind of loose jazz circus people. So I'll start with music, and then I'll have a basic kind of text card system where there'll be blank spaces where the footage will be put in at some point, and the cards with the text on will pop up and basically give you the kind of narrative of the trailer. And that's a very quick and easy way for me to then be able to talk to AK and say, here are 3 different approaches to the trailer, which one do you think is most appropriate for what we kind of want to say about the game at this stage. But then every so often I just basically have a glass of wine and get funny. And I found this great sort of Jazz Manouche style version of, what is it, Shostakovich's Waltz Number 5 or something. We mentioned this is the last day of the year. The Antibes is obviously in France. We have this very silly trailer that I have put out that has actually done quite well on YouTube Shorts, my first foray, which is also in the blog post by the time this is out. So if you haven't seen it, go to the blog post and you'll be able to see it, or just Google it on YouTube. But yes, that's YouTube. I know. As I was saying that, this is why I'm the artist.
Well, Google owns YouTube, so you're technically correct.
Anyway, so we got that, which is basically me being silly and saying France, Le Mans, and to be clear, love France, and also Adrian's from France, so hey Adrian. But the other trailer, I have actually tried.
I read that as you know, he was an unexpected squeezebox note. So it's funny seeing the contrast between worms and friendly squeezebox town square. But a lot of the comments on the trailer seemed to have been, oh yeah, France are fate even worse than eaten by worms.
I think
which
those
is
are
not what we
jokes.
intended. I hope they're jokes.
I think basically everyone thinks France is pretty great, including France.
Yes,
So,
especially France.
and if we can say this as Brits, famously the enemies of the French, because they're better than us. So, so anyway, but the other trailer, I hope you do watch it. It is representative of the game. We hope that it gets across some of the major themes. And I just hope that it's not too much of a Lottie special for people to enjoy. But
I was going to share a Lottie special research datum.
Oh, God.
Which I think makes you come off well.
Okay.
Is you're probably not aware, of those listening to it, that Lottie is a big fan of Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers.
I love them.
So she has been...
What a bygone age.
Because they are period appropriate to 1948.
I know.
She has been forced to watch some additional footage.
Oh my God, let's do it tonight.
And if you look at the hero art for Travelling at Night, what's on the mini screen, also if you happen to be in the alpha now or later and you meet a certain slinky immortal trapped in ice, then both of them are wearing dresses that Ginger Rogers
This is literally
wore.
my secret joy, is that every woman who is wearing a dress, because there are many women who are wearing either more casual clothes or a kind of day dress, but if any woman in Travelling at Night is wearing a snazzy dress, I would class it, they're almost certainly wearing a dress that I have taken from Ginger Rogers, because she is just absolutely gorgeous and the fashion is just amazing. So the lady on the front of Travelling at Night's hero art, Nina Lagasse, the Witch of Lagash, I believe.
Correct.
Thank you. Is wearing a variant of, I think, the best dress I've ever seen in my life, which is the one Ginger Rogers wears in Carefree, if anybody's interested in Googling that. So yeah, it's just a little secret thing, and
But in fact, we altered it, didn't we? Because the original
We
dress
did alter it.
is
it's heart with arrows in
Yeah.
it, because it works thematically for the themes of that film. And I initially put the heart on, and then threw a total artist paddy when AK was like, it's just not really relevant that there's a heart on her dress. Could we be like a bit more symbolic and clever? And I was like, but it's gorgeous, and you're changing it, because I become American when I get cross. And ultimately,
Washington?
you told me I did. Ultimately, you told me, and DC, not the state, and then everyone looks disappointed. And then you told me, let's change it to this bird, which has a particular, and I'm calling it a bird to not give any more
but it's
details,
relevant.
But it is relevant, and there really is a story there. And then I had to admit that you were totally right and looked great. So kudos to you, my friend.
But you made it look great, so
well,
that's
there's a
the due.
lovin'.
Oh, there's a story actually about Ginger Rogers and David Niven.
No, now you've mentioned it, you have to say it, and I'm going to have to go away and put my head in a bucket of water.
We're talking about David Niven,
Who I do love,
last time.
despite the fact that he's David Niven.
This is the thing, is that he was...
Okay,
he was,
firstly, I want to prepare you, this is slightly crude as a story.
This is the closest we'll get to a content warning. And
Not that big of a content
so David Niven, actor, raconteur, a soldier, he one of the two inspirations for Spencer's appearance, and in limited respect his personality. The other inspiration, if you heard the last episode, you'll know, is John Hurt. So David Niven, as we say, complicated man, very charming, very kind, very brave, also sometimes a bit of a cad, certainly something of a rogue. The two wartime stories about David Niven I remember, because again, the context for this is he was by that point, quite successful actor in Hollywood, and he voluntarily crossed back over the Atlantic to sign up to fight in the war for Britain, because he thought it was the right thing and most of it. Story goes, because he was a part of some reconnaissance division, he was crossing back over the lines somewhere in France, and an American soldier challenged him and wanted to know the password, and David Niven didn't know the password, but he said, I was in Bachelor Mother, though. You might have seen it. And they were like, hey, you're David Niven. And headed him back across the lines. And then, this is, I apologise, after the war, he was asked if he enjoyed fighting in combat. And there was this moment of sort of reflective silence where one might imagine scenes of carnage and despair pass by in David Niven's eyes. And then he says, well, on the whole, I'd rather have been tickling Ginger Rogers' tits.
So we are reaching the hour mark, and that's just to remind you, that is how you've chosen to end this entire year of game dev.
I could pay you some more compliments.
Crude reference to one of the greatest women on Hollywood celluloid. So,
By one of the greatest men on Hollywood celluloid. So I think that's the gender division, ultimately.
What? Celluloid? We just said we didn't want plastic over everything. Gosh darn it, we're wrong about everything.
Yeah, but then how are we going to shrink wrap it? What if the meat starts to spoil over Christmas?
Okay, this is getting worse.
You see,
this is getting worse.
Well, you did want me to end on the previous note.
Well, see, look, why can't you talk about, the beautiful stuff that you talk about, like, the stars and the holes in France and the feelings of, people spinning off into the
what I will
ministries.
talk about actually is
End it on a Christmassy nice note.
Semantics versus syntax.
Or a massively nerdy note.
I was going to say to bring it back to the alpha testing. It's been really, as I said, people always come back with things you don't expect. One of the things that I hadn't expected is, and this relates beautifully to the pathfinding, how dangerous dialogues in a traditional dialogue tree can be. Because if you just forget to leave an exit node from a subject, ask about people. Oh, what about Bessie? What about OBR? Never mind, back to the previous node. If you forget to put the never mind back to previous node, then somebody's trapped in a Sartre like hell of endlessly asking questions about
well,
Bessie
I like
and
the
OBR.
bug which turned Vincent into an Alzheimer patient, because there was some issue with his tree where I was talking to him in the alpha, and he'd say something like, so, why are you here? And my options were like, because I'm a patient, because I'm visiting, because I don't like you. And I picked one of them, and he was like, cool, why are you here? And I was like, oh. So
this is exactly the difference between semantics and syntax. So the getting caught in an infinite loop is a syntactic problem, because and you could, in theory, write a script that checked for it. It's quite hard to do that, because as with pathfinding, you don't know when you're supposed to be stuck and when you're not. If I allow people to exit from conversation at any point by hitting Control Escape, then they could dump themselves out of an important plot conversation halfway through and leave the game permanently broken. If I put a conversation unstuck button, they could do that. If I wrote some script that walked the graph of the conversation and said, you get stuck in a loop this occasion, it's got to work out. You couldn't necessarily tell whether you can only get out if you've got a certain variable set that should or should not be set at that point. That becomes a much more complicated problem. And basically, you just have to test, and then you have to rely on your lovely alpha testers, thank you very much, people, to spot this sort of thing. But you also get the semantic stuff. So in fact, I think one of the other problems with Vincent was he kept saying, I thought you were dead, like Snake Plissken in Escape from New York. And then
Snake Plissken.
And you go down into one of the conversation nodes, and you come back to the earlier node, as you often do in a tree, and it just happened that node contains text saying, I thought you were dead. So the effect is that there have been too many artillery shells going too close to his head. But the conversation made total sense when it was set up slightly differently. If it's an earlier node high up the tree where he asks. And it's particularly if you end up changing the answers that come off a question, and then you change the question. Some of the answers look also a bit sort of special needs, but it sounds like you're talking about something completely different, just because the text has changed. And that isn't something you can spot with automated testing at all. It's something you often even won't see because you've over-edited it when you're writing it. It's something you absolutely rely on user response to see. And you remember one of my obsessions is I'm trying to avoid this traditional CRPG thing where it sounds like you're talking to somebody who's not really listening to you. So they'll say, of course I lost my leg in the war, and you can say, so that's awful, or good, you deserved it, or do you still have the leg, can I see it? And their reply will always be, anyway, after I got back from France.
Yeah.
So I want a little bit of valence at each one, which does make the whole thing more sensitive to changes. There you go.
You clawed it back to actual game dev.
I have.
Well, on that note, we should end it so we can go and push all this stuff live, our blog post, our trailer, this podcast, which we have to do a little bit too before we can actually release it into the wild. Then we get to put our out-of-office emails on and go for the office Christmas party, which in this instance is us going on a date. Yes. So we wish you a very Merry Christmas, everybody.
A Merry Christmas to all, and to all a Happy New Year.
Bye-bye till 2026, everyone.
Cheers, folks.